problem 6/7 because it's going to be worth 20 points instead of your usual 10-point problem. First you run the ANOVA, then you do the stacked t-intervals. I'm going to ask you to do the stacked t-intervals even if you fail to reject. Now, here's my data. By now you should be able to look at the data and kind of understand it. Phoebe seems to have the high numbers. Rachel seems to have the low numbers. Monica's numbers seem to be all over the place. 2 is the smallest number, but 8 is, well, kind of the typical value for Phoebe. So again, with respect to range, here's a range of 6 versus a range of 3 and a range of 3. So Monica's range is twice as large. So I expect this bar to be larger. These two bars might be distinct. I wouldn't be surprised if this bar overlapped both. I definitely expect it to overlap Rachel's, probably Phoebe's as well. Null hypothesis. Well, I can use MPR, or I can use 1, 2, and 3. If I use 1, 2, and 3, I should create a link, some guide between names and numbers. So I'll just put the numbers up above. mu1 equals mu2 equals mu3. Alternative hypothesis. Remember that it's going to be at least one mean differs. The report. Well, I will have it on the test, but you're going to have to reproduce it. So, between, within, total. Sum of the squares, degree of freedom, mean squares, F and P. When I do these, not all of the values are given. We don't bother with a total for mean squares, and there's only a single F and a single P. So I'm going to gray out those 5 cells. Next, enter the values into the calculator. Stat, test, up, and analysis of variance. Remember that this one is not menu driven, largely because it doesn't know how many lists. So I just tell it which lists to use. List 1, and list 2, and list 3, and that's all. So when I hit enter, here are the values that I get. F is a test statistic, so 3 decimal places, 6.278. P is 0.012. Be careful, this is very likely to be something in scientific form, and I don't want to see answers like 1.2 for a probability. Probability is always between 0, never happens, and 1 always happens. So if you ever write something that is larger than 1 here, I'll typically take off points because it's wrong and take off extra points because it couldn't possibly be correct. I call it between and within, and I'd like you to do the same. The calculator calls it factor and error. Sum of the squares, getting it to integers is fine. I will say 37, 2, and 18.6. That would round up to 19. For within, remember that that's where it says error. 13 is the degree of freedom. 39 is the sum of the squares, so the mean squares is, and that would round up to 3. 19 over 3 is more than 6, so that looks appropriate. Adding these up, this would be 76 and 15. Let's do a quick check. This should end up being the number of data points minus 1. Well, that would be 3 times 5, which is 15 plus 1 is 16. So I've got 16 pieces of data. I've got 15 total degrees of freedom, so that is correct. Justification and judgment. F is 6.278. P is 0.012, which is less than 0.05, which is alpha. Therefore, I reject the null hypothesis. And I go straight into the stacked t-intervals. M, P, R. Remember that I want the confidence interval, the X bar, and then the stacked t intervals. And I also need to make a judgment. Back to the calculator. First for Monica. Stat test 8 for t-interval. Input from data. List 1. Confidence level. 0.05 was my alpha, so 0.95 is my confidence level. I calculate and I get 2. Well, these were 0 decimal places, so I want 1 decimal place here. So that would be 2.7 to 8.5. The mean was 5.6. And I move on to the next one. Stat, test, 8, and switch list, and nothing else. That would be 6.0 up to 9.96, so I guess that would be 10.0. The mean is 8. And one more list to go. Stat, test, 8, switch to list 3, and nothing else. 3.1 to 5.6. The mean, 4.3 repeating, 4.3. The stacked t-intervals. Underneath, put a scale. Smallest number is 2.7, largest is 10.0. Might as well just go 0 to 10. Halfway is 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. 2.7, 8.5. 6.0, 10.0. 3.1, 5.6. Visually, it's clear that Monica overlaps Phoebe, Monica overlaps Rachel. It appears that there's a gap here, though, but let's check. This one only goes up to 5.6. This one only goes down to 6.0. there is going to be a gap between those two. So I get to say that, well, do I want to use 1, 2, and 3 or MP and R? Either is fine. Let's use this time around the letters. And what I would say is that the mean for Rachel is less than the mean for Phoebe. I can't make any judgments about Monica and Phoebe or Monica and Rachel. So in this case, I only have that one name at the bottom. And move on.